Hello my dear students, a very warm welcome to you in this new video lecture. In this lecture series, we are going to discuss the whole chapter of reproduction in organisms. So in this video, we are continuing with the topic of gametogenesis. In the earlier video, you have seen the events of gametogenesis, in which you have seen the pre-fertilization event, and in that pre-fertilization event, you have seen the gamete formation. So, in the gamete formation, that particular process termed as gametogenesis, you have studied what is homothallic condition, heterothallic condition, what are bisexual individuals, unisexual individuals, what is staminate flower, pistillate flower, and so on. So, in this lecture, I am going to tell you how does this gamete formation actually takes place. What type of cell division happens in order to form one haploid gamete. So, gametogenesis we are going to discuss. Gametogenesis, in this we are going to discuss the cell division. Cell division for the formation of gamete. For the formation of gamete. Means what type of cell division happens. So there are basically two types of cell division, meiosis and mitosis. Meiosis is the reductional division, mitosis is the equational division. So in meiosis, what happens? The total number of chromosomes in an organism reduces to half. Suppose if there are 26 chromosomes in one organism, say for a plant, suppose there is a plant in which there are 26 chromosomes in total. So out of that 26, when meiosis happens, then that daughter cell will contain 26 divided by 2, means 13 chromosomes will be there. So meiosis means reduction division. Reduction in what? Reduction in the total number of chromosomes. So the total number of chromosomes becomes half in case of meiosis, meiotic division. Whereas in the mitosis, if mitosis happens, then if one organism has 26 chromosomes in one cell, then it's when mitosis takes place in that particular cell, then both the daughter cells will have 26 chromosomes each. There will be no reduction in the number of chromosomes. So there are two types of cell division. Now let us see what type of cell division happens in case of gamete formation. So you already know that gamete is what type of cell? Gamete is a haploid cell. Haploid means whatever is the total number of chromosome in one organism, in the gamete, that total chromosome gets reduced to half. In the same way, you have studied that there are diploid organisms, there are haploid organisms. So, for example, there are certain phylum like Monera, in Monera, fungi, algae, bryophytes. Those organisms have haploid body. Their total chromosome number is already half. It cannot be reduced from that complete number. So that haploid number has to be passed on to the progeny. So if the gamete formation is to happen in the haploid organism, gamete formation in haploid organism. Then we will see gamete formation in the diploid organism. So haploid organism is represented as N, diploid organism is represented as 2N, 2 copies of N. So if the gamete formation has to happen in case of haploid organism, which already have just N number of chromosomes, and also the gamete has N number of chromosomes, N chromosomes. N is not known, you just have to suppose that there are N chromosomes. So in the haploid there is N total chromosome, in the gamete also there is N, means if gamete formation has to happen in one haploid organism, then the same N has to pass. The same N has to pass into the gamete. So in this case, there will be mitotic division. Mitotic division will happen in case of haploid organism to form the gamete. Mitotic division has to happen. But if there is the diploid organism has double the number of chromosomes than the gamete. Gamete has N, this has 2N, double number of chromosomes. The diploid organism has double number. So if the gamete formation has to happen in case of diploid organism, then what type of division will take place? What type of cell division will take place? So it will be meiotic division. Meiotic division will take place in case of diploid organism. So this way, from haploid organism through the meiotic division, the gamete will be formed, and in the diploid organism, through the meiotic division, the gamete will form. So this way, the process of gametogenesis completes here. Gametogenesis is what? Formation of gamete. So you have understood there are two types of cell division in different type of organisms. So these are the two, and the gamete formation happens. So we just saw that the first process in case of pre-fertilization event is the gametogenesis. Now we are proceeding towards the second process of the pre-fertilization event, which is gamete transfer. So basically in the sexual reproduction, what has to happen? There has to be the fusion between the male and female gametes. The fusion of male and female gametes has to happen in order to the sexual reproduction to occur. So for the fusion, you just saw how the gametes are formed. Gametogenesis is already completed. Now when the gamete is formed in two different organisms, then for the fusion they have to come into close contact to one another. So that close contact is required for the fusion. So for bringing both the gametes in the close contact, there is a process termed as gamete transfer, which you have to study. So gamete transfer is the second process in case of pre-fertilization events. After gametogenesis, the gamete has to be transferred from one place to another. What is the purpose of the transfer? The purpose of the transfer is to bring the two gametes in close contact in order to help them fuse together. So gamete transfer, in case of certain lower organisms such as Monera, algae, bryophytes and pteridophytes. What happens is that the gamete transfer is facilitated by some medium between the two organisms. For example, I am taking the example of bryophytes. Suppose there is a bryophyte. This is a bryophyte. There will be antheridium. In the antheridium, there will be microspores, which are the male gametes. Then there will be oogonium. In the oogonium, there will be female gametes. Same way, there will be another plant, another bryophyte. There will be yet another bryophyte. This bryophyte is of the same species, because in the living world, you know, the concept of a species has come from reproductive isolation. Means one species cannot breed with the another. However, there are certain exceptions, but the interspecific reproduction is not common. So therefore, this bryophyte and this bryophyte belong to the same species, and therefore they have the same type of structure. This is the oogonium. Oogonium is the female reproductive structure which will form female gametes. This is the antheridium, where male gametes will be formed. And here there is the water. This is the water in between these two plants. Bryophytes basically live near the water bodies. So there is the water between these two plants. So in order to help them fertilize, help the two gametes fertilize, what will happen? This male gamete will come into water. This male gamete will come here. The same way, the female gamete will also come in the water. Female gamete will also come into the water. Female gamete is also coming into the water. It is also discharged into the water. Now this water has both male gamete and the female gamete. So in this way, in certain species, as you are seeing here, in certain species, both the gametes are discharged into a common medium, and in that way, both can fuse in that particular medium, inside that particular medium. In the same way, in case of animals, the fishes also discharge both their gametes in the water, and there the fertilization takes place. So that is also a type of gamete transfer. So gametes are basically secreted in one common medium. There they fuse. They are not transferred from one body to the another body. They are not transferred from the male to the female. No. Both the gametes have to come in a common medium, and there they will have to fuse. So this was the case of lower organisms, and also in case of certain animals. As just now I gave the example of fishes. Now, in case of angiosperms, what happens? Angiosperms, you know that angiosperms are highly evolved plants. So they are heterothallic in nature, means they have well defined male and reproductive structures on their flower. So the male reproductive structure is termed as stamen, and the female reproductive structure is a pistil. So male gamete will be formed from the stamen. Pollen grain contains two male gametes. Two male gametes. In the pistil, which is the female reproductive structure, there will be ovule, and ovule will have egg. Egg is what? Egg is the female gamete. So two male gametes are there in the pollen grain, one female gamete is there in the ovule. So the fertilization between these two has to happen, between the male gamete and the female gamete in case of angiosperms. But angiosperms are terrestrial plants. They are not there in the water. There is no common medium there. So what will happen? There is a process termed as pollination. Pollination will happen. So pollination will happen in case of angiosperms, and this pollination is one of the mechanisms for gamete transfer. This pollination is one of the mechanisms for gamete transfer. So now let us see what happens in the pollination, during the pollination. So what we are studying? We are studying the pre-fertilization event. In the pre-fertilization event, we are studying the second process. First process was gametogenesis, second process is gamete transfer. So in the gamete transfer, we are studying the case of angiosperms. Earlier to the angiosperms, we have seen the lower organisms such as Monera, algae, bryophyte, pteridophyte, etc. Now we are seeing angiosperms. In the angiosperm, we have found that there is a particular mechanism which is termed as pollination, and this pollination is one of the mechanisms of gamete transfer. So pollination can be of three types: autogamy, geitonogamy, and xenogamy. These things you will be studying in the next chapter, in which you are going to study the reproduction in flowering plants. So these three processes of pollination you are going to study in the next chapter. For now, you have to know that pollination is one of the mechanisms of the gamete transfer. This is it. Next to the angiosperms, what happens in higher animals? For example, in cows, what will happen? How will the gametes be transferred? So, in cows, which are higher organisms, higher animals, what will happen? There will be male individual, there will be the female individual. So both these will produce two different type of gametes. Here will be the female gamete. So in case of ox, in case of cow, there is a cross that happens between these two. A cross or mating has to happen. Mating has to happen in order to these gametes to be brought together. So basically, in higher animals, only one of the two gametes are motile. Only one. Either male gamete will be motile or the female gamete will be motile. Motile means which has the capability to move from one place to another. Motile means, motility means movement, ability to move. So in case of cows, it is the male gamete which is motile. So this is motile. So this is motile gamete. Motile means it has the ability to move. So if it is motile, can move. So if it is motile, it can go to the female gamete. And how does it goes to this? Through a process termed as cross or mating. So this is the type of gamete transfer which happens in case of cows. So there they will fuse. Fusion will happen. And the fertilization event will take place, and thus the fertilization event takes place. So this was about the gamete transfer in different type of organisms. Now the next event in sexual reproduction is the fertilization event. I have already told you that there are three events. The first event was pre-fertilization event. Second event is the fertilization event, and third event is post-fertilization event. So now we are going to discuss fertilization. Now we are going to discuss the second event, which is fertilization. So what is fertilization? In the sexual reproduction, I have told that there will be fusion of gametes. So fusion of gametes is a process. Fusion is an English term. Now you are studying biological science. So biological science or science has its own terminologies. So the fusion, same fusion, which you are saying in English fusion of gametes, the same thing you have to say as fertilization. So fertilization is the process of fusion of male and female gametes to form zygote. This fertilization process is also termed as syngamy. Syngamy or fertilization, both are the same things. Now the purpose of fertilization is the formation of zygote. So what is zygote? Zygote is a single cell which contains the genetic material from both the parents or from both the gametes. The genetic material from both the gametes will be there in the zygote. So zygote in most cases is 2n. In case of diploid organism, the zygote is 2n. So for the formation of zygote, there has to be a male gamete, then there will be the female gamete. Fertilization has to happen and zygote formation will take place. So this is the simple depiction of fertilization. Male gamete and female gamete fuse to form the zygote. Now let us see the fertilization in plants. How does the fertilization takes place in plants? I hope you are also writing along with me, because there is no use of simply listening to the lecture. Your mind cannot keep the things remembered for longer until you make your own notes. I am trying to give the shortest notes. I am not giving so much of the text because I know that there is already a lot much of the text in your book. So, well, fine. So we are going to discuss fertilization in case of plants. In plants. So in plants, I am taking an example of angiosperm. In the angiosperm, there is the ovule. This is the stigma. This is the style. So this is the female reproductive structure. This is the female reproductive structure. Same way, there will be male reproductive structure. So this is anther and this is filament. Anther and the filament. So this male reproductive structure, this is the male reproductive structure in case of angiosperms. This is termed as pistil, or sometimes it is also called carpel. Pistil or carpel are one and the same thing. Either you say pistil or carpel. The female reproductive structure is, male reproductive structure is called stamen. So if I say what is a stamen, you will say it is the male reproductive structure of higher plants. But if you have to tell me in few words, you can say that stamen is equal to anther plus filament. The stamen is made up of anther and filament. So the pollen grain formation happens in the anther, and pollen grain we can take as the male gamete. So this pollen grain is transferred onto the stigma of the female plant, stigma of the female flower or the female reproductive structure. So from here there will be pollen tube formation. This thing you are going to study in greater detail in the next chapter. The next chapter is about, so this one is the egg. This is the egg. Egg means female gamete. Egg means female gamete. So female gamete is here. Male gamete, there are two male gametes inside one pollen grain. So one pollen grain has fallen on the stigma. It contains two male gametes. So the two male gametes come into the this ovule, and in the ovule they have to fertilize with the egg. But you know that for the formation of zygote there is need of n plus n. There is just need of two gametes, one female and one male. But here you can say that there are two male gametes. So what will happen to the second male gamete? Only one of the male gamete can fuse with one of the female gametes. But what will happen to the second male gamete? That thing you are going to see in the next chapter. So here my purpose is only to explain you that how does the fertilization takes place in case of angiosperms or the higher plants. In case of angiosperms or the higher plants, the fertilization happens like this. Through the there is gamete transfer. The earlier process of fertilization was the gamete transfer. So gamete is transferred through the pollination, and now the male gamete has approached here. This male gamete will fuse with a female gamete. Now we can say that the fertilization has happened. In some of the organisms, suppose there is a lizard. So in lizard there is a special type of fusion or fertilization that happens. There is no need of two type of gametes for the lizard formation. This fertilization you just saw in case of plants. Now you have to see in case of animals. In the animals, there are certain animals which do not undergo proper fertilization. There is not proper fertilization. Rather than the fertilization, there is a process called Parthenogenesis. Parthenogenesis. In case of animals. In case of certain animals such as this example you have to learn. You can be asked in your NEET exam also. So this is lizard. In case of lizard, or in case of a bird termed as turkey. Turkey is a type of bird. Lizard, bird, and then the most common example is honeybee. In case of honeybee. So parthenogenesis is a process. Okay, fine. We can discuss this parthenogenesis in a little bit of detail. So these were the examples of the organisms which were undergoing parthenogenesis. Parthenogenesis is what? The fertilization, the skipping of fertilization. There is no fertilization there. For the formation of zygote, there is no need of fertilization. So parthenogenesis is skipping of fertilization still the zygote formation happens. Zygote formation happens. A little earlier, I told you that fertilization helps in the formation of zygote. There is two type of gametes, they fuse, the fertilization happens, and then zygote formation occurs. But in a special case which is termed as parthenogenesis, in this process there is no fertilization, still there is zygote formation. So zygote, how does the zygote forms? Zygote, you have understood that it is 2n. So if 2n, in case of diploid organism I am talking about, so in case of diploid organism zygote is 2n. So how will it form with just one organism? There is no need of fusion of two gametes. So let us take an example of the bees, or let us take example of the lizard. So in the lizard, the egg directly develops into zygote. Directly develops into zygote. This egg directly develops into the zygote. So parthenogenesis is an exception in case of fertilization. No fertilization has occurred, still there is zygote formation. There is formation of new individual. Same way, in case of plants, there is a process parthenocarpy. This is parthenogenesis, and this happens in case of animals. But in case of plants, there is also formation of fruit without fertilization, which is termed as parthenocarpy. Parthenocarpy is the process of formation of fruit without fertilization. You will study this in detail in the next chapter. Parthenocarpy. Parthenogenesis was in case of animals. Parthenocarpy is there in the case of plants. But both the two processes are about skipping of fertilization. No fertilization has to occur in those exceptional cases. Fertilization is the main event of sexual reproduction. Then in certain organisms, fertilization can be of basically two types. It can be external fertilization, or it can be internal fertilization. External means outside the body, outside of the mother body. The fertilization can occur outside the mother body. I have already gave you the example in case of bryophytes. In the bryophytes, the fertilization was occurring in the water medium. So that type of fertilization is the external fertilization. The same external fertilization concept comes in case of fishes and amphibians. There also the two type of gametes are discharged into a common medium, and fertilization happens in that particular common medium. Next one is the internal fertilization. Internal fertilization means the gamete is transferred, the male gamete is transferred in female body, and there the fertilization happens in the particular organ of the female body. As in case of cows, you saw in the earlier example, in case of cows, in case of human beings also, the fertilization is internal. After the fertilization has taken place, what will happen? Post-fertilization events. Post-fertilization events. Until now you have understood the pre-fertilization events, then the fertilization event, Now we are proceeding to the last event of the sexual reproduction, which is post-fertilization event. Post means after. Post means after. After the fertilization has happened. What happens after fertilization is complete? So after fertilization has completed, the first thing that happens is zygote formation. First thing that happens is zygote formation. First thing happening is the zygote formation. So in the diploid organism, the zygote is 2n in nature. So this is all you have to know. In the post-fertilization event, the first thing is the zygote formation. Second thing is the embryogenesis. Embryogenesis means formation of embryo. Wherever there is the term genesis, genesis means formation or generation. Genesis means formation or generation. So wherever there is the term embryogenesis, you have to understand that we are going to talk about formation of embryo. Embryogenesis, formation of embryo. So embryo forms from what? Embryo forms from the zygote. The zygote has to develop into embryo, and the embryo will further develop into a complete organism. Zygote will develop into embryo. So there is a cell division taking place. From zygote to the embryo, there is a continuous cell division which happens because zygote is single celled. Single celled. Zygote is one cell. So we all the human beings are formed from one cell, one single cell. At first we were just one cell. Then later on our body has formed. So how the formation of body, as you know that the body is made up of cells. So this is single cell, we are multicellular organism. So there has to be the cell division, multicellular. This is single cell, this is multicellular. Embryo is multicellular. So there has to be a cell division, which is basically mitosis. Mitosis is the equational division. There is no reduction in the chromosome number. If the zygote had total 26 chromosomes, then the embryo, each cell of embryo will have 26 chromosomes. Each cell. This is one cell. This is many cell, multicellular. So there is mitosis which has occurred. In the zygote, mitosis occurs. After mitosis, the embryo is formed. So the chromosome number is same as in case of zygote. In every cell of the embryo, there is same number of chromosomes. So this is how embryogenesis takes place. Further, in case of plants, what happens? In case of plants, there are certain other processes or the changes that happen after fertilization. These two are the main events which were happening in the post-fertilization event. These two are the main processes which will happen in all type of post-fertilization events in every organism. So in case of plants, there can be additional changes, some additional changes, such as fruit formation. Fruit formation will take place. After fertilization, the fruit formation will take place. So fruit formation, from where is the fruit formed? In the fertilization, you saw that the male gamete was coming to fuse with the egg inside the ovule. So that ovule was inside the ovary. So fruit is formed from ovary. Fruit is formed from ovary. From ovary. I have to draw the same diagram again. The same stigma, style and ovary. This is the ovule. This is the egg. These are additional structures that you will study in the next chapter. So this is ovule. And this part is the ovary. This part is the ovary. This is style. This is stigma. So male gamete is here. Male gamete will fertilize with the egg. After fertilization, this complete ovary, this ovary will turn into fruit, will form the fruit. This ovary will form the fruit. And the fruit is a mechanism to protect the seeds. Because seeds are the propagules, seeds are the structure which will help in the propagation of that particular plant to the next generation. So those seeds are to be protected, and the nature has adopted a mechanism of the fruit formation in order to protect that particular seed. In case of angiosperms, it always happens that the seeds are protected inside the fruit. So when ovary turns into the fruit, the other part of this flower, if you have studied the structure of flowering plants, in your class 11th you already have studied the structure of flowering plants. So what happens, there is petal, petal is corolla, then there is calyx, there is the female reproductive structure. So what happens, when this fruit formation has happened, then the other parts such as this corolla as well as the calyx, these all wither away. Wither away means dry and fall off. Wither away. What structures will wither away? The petals and the sepals. These structures will wither away, and this style stigma will also dehish. They will also degenerate. So this way fruit formation happens, and in the post-fertilization events, one more event happens. There are some additional events happening. That is the withering of the additional structures surrounding the ovary. So this thing happens. Now let us see what are the layers in the fruit. So fruit can contain pericarp, mesocarp and endocarp. Pericarp means outermost. The peel of any fruit, suppose there is mango, so the peel of mango will be pericarp. Then there will be mesocarp, the fleshy portion of the mango that you eat, that is mesocarp. Then there is endocarp. So this is the mango seed. This is the mango seed. So on the mango seed you will notice that this is the mango seed. You will notice a membranous structure. This membranous structure is the endocarp. In case of mango, this membranous structure is the endocarp. So there are basically three layers in the fruit of angiosperms. Now in the post-fertilization events, we also have to see in the case of animals. This was in case of plants. So what happens in case of animals? After fertilization, there is development of embryo. So in some of the animals, some animals can be oviparous and others can be viviparous. So if you have to write short notes on the events of fertilization for 5 marks, then you will have to include the post-fertilization event, and in the post-fertilization event you will have to discuss the fruit formation in case of plants, and in case of animals you will have to discuss these two terms, oviparous and viviparous. Oviparous are those animals in which, okay fine, do you know that what is egg? Egg, in fertilized egg, in case of animals, suppose I am taking the example of duck. So in case of duck, the fertilized egg is what? Zygote. The egg that you are seeing after fertilization is now the zygote. So this zygote has to become embryo. There has to be development. Mitosis has to happen. So this development or the cell division, if it happens in outside the female body, if it happens outside the female body and inside an egg, if the embryo formation is happening in the egg, then that particular animal will be termed as oviparous. Oviparous or egg laying. Egg laying. And viviparous means giving birth to young one. So in the egg laying organisms, or in case of oviparous organisms, there is the egg is already the zygote, and this zygote is secreted out of the female body, and this zygote develops into the embryo. The embryo development will happen here. Embryo development happens in the egg. So this type of phenomenon is termed as oviparity, and the animal undergoing such development is oviparous. Then there is this calcium deposition. White thing that you see in the egg is calcium. So because of the calcium, it is termed as calcareous cell. Calcareous shell. Calcareous means made up of calcium. Made up of calcium. This covering is made up of calcium, and this covering protects the embryo. Since the egg is outside of the mother body, there the embryo is being formed, so there is protection needed, and this protection from outside environment is provided by the calcareous cell. In viviparous organism, the formation of complete young one happens inside the female body. So this was about the post-fertilization events in case of animals. In case of animals, you just saw the post-fertilization events in case of animals was through the oviparity or viviparity. So some of the egg-laying organisms, there is a egg-laying mammal. This example you have to remember for your NEET exam. Egg-laying mammal is platypus. So there are certain mammals which are egg-laying. So here our chapter finishes. I hope you have enjoyed the learning. Thank you.